Welcome to Monday, right after Father's Day. I hope all the badass dads out there either were racing regionals or riding dirt bikes themselves. You know, you guys don't get enough credit, just like mechanics. They don't get enough credit because they're the ones that are up at 1 o'clock in the morning for a race that's supposed to start at 7 a.m. And most of the dads out there, they do all that. You know, they're not only the trainers, but they're the confidants, they're the psychologists, they're the dads, you know, and they're the mechanics. So anyway, this is the MX Unfiltered podcast where we shoot the shit about everything dirt bikes and everything that's going on, you know, from training to nationals to everything. So I will first introduce our guest, and he's somebody that I have admired pretty much my entire life. You know, he is now 50 years old, still looks like he's 30, but we know him by Red Dog. What's up, Tim?
How's it going, man? I'll take 30.
I mean, you have to, right? Because just off the top of my head, what was the worst injury that is kind of hurting you now that you're a little bit older?
Man, I would say my heel is kind of the end of in 2009, the one I busted at Daytona. That one never fully healed, and they kept telling me early on, like, "Hey, this is kind of a lifelong thing." So I'm like, whatever. But it still bothers. But it doesn't bother me like to the point where like I don't even have to take like ibuprofen or anything like that. So I feel like I'm pretty healthy. I did break my leg in October racing. So that actually is more sore at the moment, but my heel probably was the worst one.
Like you broke your leg last October?
Yeah, last October. Yeah, me and my younger son went to a race. I'm like, oh, I'll race. And so on the first moto, got a good start. Second moto, spun like crazy. So I was like panic. It was only 4-lap race at a local race. So I'm like trying to pin it to get to the front. Somebody just kind of fell in front of me. And then I ran into him, but I stuck my leg in between his wheel and front fender and fork and just bent it over and snapped it. So
That's the worst, is when your injuries are not caused by you. You know, it's either a bike malfunction or somebody else. Those are the hardest ones to get over, to at least mentally.
Mentally, for sure. Yeah. This one was, and I kind of rushed. I felt like I take a little bit of blame. The guy felt so bad. He's like, man, I'm so sorry. He just crashed on his own. And I was trying to cut out of him, like square up. And I should have just kind of stopped and kind of went away. But so I take the blame. It wasn't his fault. He was crashing, whether I was behind him or not. So I just, unfortunately, was the wrong place at the wrong time.
Ain't that the truth, right?
Yeah.
And then I have the co-host, Coach Rob. What's up?
Good morning, guys. Good
Morning.
morning. It's always good to be with Red Dog. It's a privilege. Like you said, somebody always, and not to make him blush or anything, but I remember cutting out pictures of him out of Motocross Action and Racer X. And I was that geek that put him up on my wall and just sit there and look at the bikes and the gear. And I just, not because Timmy's on the show, but I always felt like his gear was always so cool. I don't know if that was a priority of yours or not, Timmy, but it was always looked good. And I always joke with Hopper, you don't always have to go fast. You just have to look good. But if you can go fast and look good, it's a win-win. So
yeah. Look pro, go slow.
Yeah. But you were in a generation where everybody looked good.
I always loved Rick Johnson as a kid. Yeah. So like the same thing you're saying, like Rick Johnson always had like the cool gear. He was the bad boy. So yeah. And I remember wearing pink and stuff. So, yeah. So I was definitely, it was a purpose behind it to some extent, but there's a few other riders took it to another level, but as far as their gear and stuff, at some point I just kind of got more focused on racing than the look.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I feel like that was an era where everybody had a different, their own identity, their own look, where now it's just, everybody kind of looks the same. I mean, I'm watching guys go from Thor to Fly, and then I don't even notice it almost looks exactly the same. So yeah. It was more distinct, I feel like, back then, but maybe that's just my age.
That's a good point, because even back then you didn't have quite the reach when it came to marketability, right? You expected the magazines to do the marketing for you, but now you can be almost like your own marketing machine.
Yeah.
So if you were a little bit different, I mean, I guess it goes back to, gosh, I'm going to use Brian again with his chest protectors with the spikes. Everybody remembers that, even though like probably a horrible idea. You can never get away with it racing AMA, but still, it gave an identity there.
Yeah, I
Well,
think there's huge value in that, especially if you're winning or or doing good. So,
yeah.
yeah, you don't want to be the guy in the back doing something goofy, but yeah, if you can perform and have a different look, you're more marketable. So, it just adds one more little thing to your to your value when it comes to the end of the year for a contract.
So I have a hard question for Timmy.
Sure,
You ready for it, Timmy?
go for it.
Would you be found dead in these new onesies that everybody's wearing?
I don't know. I probably would, honestly, if it was because I wore the baggy pants. I rode for JT, so I was one of those guys. So I've only seen pictures of them. I've never seen them in person, so I have no
Yeah.
clue how they fit or how they feel. I will say the theory on it. I really hate when my pants slide off.
Yeah.
So one thing I liked about the O'Neill stuff is they always had like an extra strap. They had like a zip up extra strap, so you could actually go. I'd always go a little tighter because when that seat has so much traction on it, and then when the seat bump, and now the bikes are so fast, you feel like I hated when my pants slid. Even this is weird, but my underwear versus my pants,
Yeah.
like I didn't like it to ever slide. So maybe there's some value in it. Maybe it's like bicycling or something.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says it definitely holds everything in place, but I don't know when you, like Johnny, when you were behind the gate and you're watching, like you were showing Tomac and I think it was Moseman, and it just looks like he's in nylon, pajamas.
Well, I mean, the bikes have so much torque and everything, and you
Yeah.
totally understand why. So you don't want that 2 inches of slack to slip and have that bike push and you move. You want to be one with the motorcycle. So that's why they run all the tight stuff. But the tight stuff it's kind of gay, right? Like,
Yeah.
Coach, I was at the Ironman this weekend, and this guy was cleaning my lenses, with like some anti-fog stuff, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's gonna make you look so cool." And I'm like, "Dude, this is probably the gayest thing that I've like continued to do after riding bikes." The only thing that was less gay than this was like enduro cross. My wife hated me when I was racing enduro cross because she was like, "This was the stupidest thing you've ever fucking done, Johnny. Like, you go jump into a bunch of wood and then you fall over, then you get up and then you go hammer into rocks and you fall over and you're doing 5 miles an hour." But anyway, I just was telling him, like, because I'm about ready to put on a space alien helmet and I'm gonna ride around in my underwear, and it was like, thank God I'm already married.
With tube socks up to your knees.
Yeah, dude. And then, Coach, I was on the run and I was just throwing water all over me. And I'm like, I hope to God I'm not going to have a Christian Craig moment where I'm just in my onesie and then, here's your slong hanging out because got nothing else going on. Like, I don't know. The onesies are,
they're wrong. They're wrong at every level, especially in triathlon. I'm sorry, man.
The reasoning behind them. But make sure you wear your underwear if you're gonna put the onesies on, I guess.
Yeah, but to Timmy's.
So is there more than Fox making them now?
It's probably gonna catch on. I'm assuming.
Sure.
And honestly, Tim, like the biggest caveat, or I would say the downside with that is, hey, whenever you fall down and you rip your jersey because you get some road rash in your elbows or something, you're like, okay, sweet, I need to go buy another $50 jersey. Well, if you have a $600 just onesie, well, shit, now you need to buy a whole nother $600 onesie because it's all
thought about that.
That's probably the biggest thing.
I don't have one, so I've.
Thank God, because
and even in cycling, I actually prefer to wear just shorts and a top and a shirt.
Exactly.
Cycling shirt. I don't really like the overalls. I don't like them on my
the bibs.
When I'm cycling on my bands and across my boobs. When I was racing, I'd always burn tape on because the things just rub you like crazy in a moto. So especially when you start sweating a lot. So I really like just regular shorts and just a regular cycling jersey.
I love you even more now, Timmy, because that's what I said to Johnny last week. I was in Colorado helping him with his swimming, and we were talking about these onesie things. And again, they're doing them in triathlons and everything else. And I'm just like, it looks wrong from head to toe. Johnson's bouncing around. You're throwing water all over yourself. It looks like a wet T-shirt contest. It's just like, man. And like Reese said in the chat room here, but what about my cup, right? got to have that bad boy sticking out there. So yeah, it's wrong at so many different levels.
Yeah, I remember when I first got into cycling as a pro, well, not even before pro probably, but I'd always still wear baggies. So like
I
even
love
now,
it.
it's kind of cool. Sometimes they make the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Like so when I go cycling, you make on a mountain bike, they got the shorts on,
Yep.
with the padding and stuff, so you feel a little less gay, I guess.
Yeah, you still have the cargo look, but you've got the jewels are at least getting a little bit of love and
Yeah,
attention. So it is a win-win. Of course, those shorts weigh probably what, 4.5, 5 pounds. They're awesome though. I'm with you.
yeah.
But no, it's I'm not sure where Johnny wants to go with the conversation, but how's Evan feeling? How's he doing? How's his recovery?
He's doing good. Yeah, he's been back riding for a little while, but just kind of slowly coming back in.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, beginning of January, he tore the Achilles.
Mm.
But luckily, we flew home Sunday morning after Anaheim by, I think, Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, had surgery. So it happened quick. So,
Okay.
but just, yeah, taking our time. And
Do we have an ETA on when we may see him back racing? Will we get a chance to see him this summer?
I highly doubt it.
Okay.
Potentially, but I think it's still too early to tell.
Did it tear it completely off the Achilles?
Yeah. I believe it just tore like right in the middle, like just can't this tear. Really similar situation to Tomac. Obviously the camera was on Tomac. I was actually filming when it happened for Evan, so I have the film.
Okay.
But just an iPhone footage of it. And he just kind of went over a tabletop and then in a pocket, and it just popped the same way as Tomac. So yeah, super odd. I had heard that Jalik was about the similar. But now that at first I was like, whoa, Achilles, man, it's happening a lot. But then I heard like, Max Anstey's had one. There's been, I guess, drawing a blank now, another guy. There's been quite a few over the last, say, 10 years that I didn't really realize. Kind of went under the radar a little bit, maybe.
One of the things that Johnny's talked a lot about is they'll take especially with you guys being so fast and needing so much more flexibility. Was there any, Johnny, I apologize, I think it was the Alpine Star that Tomac was wearing, and you said one of the braces was removed. Are we seeing the theme? Like, was there any adjustments made to, no?
He just had standard ones, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then another kid that he had been riding with in Florida, Ashton Aruda, like a week before that, had done his just full stock boots. So I don't know that, and I kind of know where they're going with it. I feel like, but I just think that the force is the issue really more so than any of that.
Johnny, what's that peg?
That's my take on it, because I've heard like somebody did it with cutout ones, somebody did it with half cutout ones, and then now there's a kid that just did it with they were fully stiff, stock boots. So I think it's just kind of more.
They're called ankle saver pegs, is what they are.
So the other kid had the one kid I'm talking about actually had those too, and it still happened. So that's why I think So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like people just kind of run with the theory. I mean, and everybody's situation, I'm assuming, is obviously different. The impact and the G out. So it'd be really cool to see how much G out forces these guys really do take, like in a lap. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's the part that's so amazing to me, is especially if you're saying that one of those riders had those pegs and still blew it out. It's just, and with all your experience, obviously you're one of the first with the 4-stroke. I mean, you've seen the 4-stroke literally from its inception all the way up to what we see it as today. And you're still riding, like you said. I don't know if you've ridden since October, if you're back on the bike or not. What do you say to Evan? Like, I hate to say it because we know we can't prevent it, but what adjustments are you going to make to try to keep that from happening again?
I mean, nothing. I would say, obviously making sure that it's healed, for one.
Yeah,
I think that's the most important thing, fully healed. And then the function, the strength, and getting all that back through all the therapy and stuff. So that's why he's been taking more time. Can he ride? Sure. But at the same time, like riding, proper, being able to control the bike. I mean, looking at the outdoor nationals now, no knock to the guys in my time or earlier than me that, are my heroes, but the tracks nowadays are gnarly. So they're rough, they're rutted. your feet get ripped off the peg. So everything's got to be like spot on. So I would say the most thing, just being 100%. You don't want to show up. That's one thing I really admire about like the Jett and a few of those top guys. As soon as they get hurt, you don't see them keep lingering around, right, trying to ride injured and things like that. They go get fixed. I get it. They have the luxury, but at the same time, they're being pros. So they go, they get fixed, they come back, and they go right back to the top again. So, so that's, I admire that when riders, make that tough decision and just get fixed, get healed, take the time, and just know that they got a long career. They need to take care of their body.
You bring up something that I've always been interested in, and obviously you can only speak to what you are comfortable speaking about, but, having the chance to work with some of these riders, where their contracts are like, look, if you're not finishing at least, and I'll just pull a number out, it more specifically than I do, because I think your dad was your agent. Was your Jimmy Button your agent?
No.
I wasn't sure who did your agency work in the contracts.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I did them all myself.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
And then my first 3 years, I was a privateer. So I was on no salary or anything like that. And then my first year when I went to Suzuki in 95, the Ray Tetherton just walked up and handed me my contract, like, hey, here's your contract. So that kind of type of thing. So it was different times. Then I had a guy named Fred Bramlett.
Was that Sean's dad? Or that's Hamblin,
No,
excuse me. No, Bramlett. That's
no,
different.
yeah. Fred Bramlett was actually Scott Summers' agent, and they owned the agency together back then. I think I got hooked up with him about 98.
Okay.
And then I used him all the way through my career, and he was just a good, solid guy. Like, I would say he was in the industry, but he wasn't in the industry. He wasn't in the scene. Not like the agents nowadays, where it's kind of like they're part of the entourage. So, like, sometimes I would never even see him at the race. So, so he was good. And him and Scott Summers had an agency together, and eventually I think he bought Scott Summers out. Scott Summers, if people don't know, is a legendary off-road racer. So
absolutely
rode for Honda forever. So
like when you were just talking about, we see a lot of these guys that if they can stick their foot back in that boot, they're going riding. And I get asked all the time, they're like, why would someone do that when they haven't healed 100%? And I'm like, well, we don't get to see the contracts. A lot of those guys, it's a percentage of races. You don't get your salary or whatever.
So that is an interesting thing now that I see that I didn't see in my time is they only guarantee you a certain amount of pay on paper. And I want to say like it's a third from what I can kind of tell. I don't know if that's across the board, every manufacturer. When I was doing it, I think it was a certain amount, like after you missed a certain amount of races, say 5 to 7, maybe just doing numbers, 5 to 7, and then they would deduct it from there. And depending on who you are, like, I feel like I got deducted one time for like one race ever, my whole career. So the company's always honored it. So, but now I do think it is different. We're in a different environment now. They ride because they're injured. Otherwise they get cut. Like, so, it's a little more, I feel like it's a little more cutthroat now. A lot of guys fighting for, a few positions available. So but I want to say a third is a number that I hear a lot from some manufacturers. So now that doesn't mean that they always do it. I've heard a lot of them just still pay it out. Like, hey, he got hurt racing. We need to honor that. Like he didn't break his leg water skiing. So,
right.
So I think they do a lot, but I think they always leave themselves an out. And I feel
would that go for gear contracts as well as OEMs?
Well, I mean, I think that the way I see it is, looks like most of the lights guys, all of it's all tied to one.
Okay.
So now when you get to the 450, they're all separate contracts. And I think it really just comes down to the relationship that rider has with that company and the personnel that are there.
So you're saying the contract's kind of like a guideline.
I think it's a guideline. I think it's and then obviously if you're a complete jackass and you're screwing up, then you're probably going to get cut. So, but if you're doing everything right, for the most part, I think they kind of still honor it for the most part. From what I hear in the industry. Now I am a little bit more removed from it because I'm not going to the races every weekend. So when you're at the races, you hear all the BS and gossip stuff, which I don't
Sure.
really care here anyway. So
Mhm. It's so high school, as we've
Yeah.
seen from this last week. I feel like-
Oh
my God.
boy.
Um,
I didn't know if we could avoid that.
how Tim, the regional, right? So you've got
Yep.
a little one that is 13 years old that's trying to go to Loretta in multiple classes or just one class?
we've rode them all. So he kind of felt kind of funny. Like he was like the opposite of Evan, where Evan was really small and he rode 65s all the way out till he was almost 13. And then, so he's 13 and he's on a 125 already, but still dabbling in the super mini. He's just he's just a bigger kid. So I got two kids they grew differently at ages. So yeah, and he's not old enough to ride a 250 and not quite big enough yet. So he kind of rides 125 and a super mini. So he's kind of going between the 125 class is at the amateur that we ride regional, and then the other classes are at the youth. So I've been kind of all over the place.
It's crazy
And
how they split that up.
Yeah,
So-
it's just weird. I know that they're trying to. He's riding the 125 BC at a youth and the 125C at an amateur, but super mini, and then even 85s at the youth.
Yeah.
So he just kind of falls where he can ride. And honestly, there's more classes that you can sign up for that he could ride because of his size.
Wow.
So
wow. And your little kiddo went 119.2 for 7th overall, and he missed it by 1.
he missed it by 1 and 1 point. So then you're at the end of the day, you're going through all the what ifs. Like, well, what if you hadn't fallen in that one moto that he fell twice in this middle moto, got kind of a bad start, and then kind of like tried to like get to the front real quick and tip over in a turn, and then it's only a 4-lap race. So, and then got going, then gets white flag, then tips over again. Oh, if we wouldn't have had that tip over, we'd have made it. So, but that's kind of like part of racing. You leave that moto going, man, this sucks. I'm over this crap. Got those low feelings, and then you go out, 2 hours later and you race again, you get a second, and you're like, you're all back in. It's probably like golfing. You hit it in the woods, and next thing you know, you hit it on the green, and now you're hooked again. So
yeah, just so many emotions. It's just
there is, yeah,
boom, boom, boom. And
yeah.
the regionals, it's funny because like you have 4-lap motos, but then once you go to Loretta, everyone's getting like the 20-minute moto, and it's the whole week-long deal. Like it does not set people up for success with a sprint versus the actual moto that's happening.
Yeah, but I will. For some reason, this weekend, I know they got weather on Saturday. So the last moto was 5 laps, but south of the border, we actually went 7 laps. So it was kind of more just because they got weather on Saturday, and then we had weather, I think, coming in at around 2 or 3 yesterday that they kind of shortened them a little bit. But most of them have been 7 laps. So you figure if you do 7 times 2, you're getting close to 14 minutes, depending on your front and back. So that is getting better. But I will say, we were always big on like, hey, we need longer motos. We need longer motos. But then what happened was, I noticed this with Evan, is we would go to Freestone, or another race that was like a week long, and then they would do 20-minute motos or 25-minute motos. But then you started riding, 3 or 4 different classes, and then it was like, wait, they're like, hold on, now this is too much. So because you were having like sometimes 2 to 3, say 20 or 25-minute motos in a day, and then you add another one the next day, and then then you do the same thing again the next day, and then it becomes too much. So I think if you make the motos longer, we really should stick to, in my opinion, I think we should stick to 2 classes. Make the motos longer, stick to 2 classes. And I'm as guilty as any of them. At south of the border, we raced 4 classes.
Right.
So when they were running 7-lap motos, so on Sunday, we ended up dropping 2 motos. If we'd have raced all the motos, we'd have been close to 2 hours on a Sunday at south of the border. So, which is a lot of time for a young kid,
Well, Tim, you're a moto dad, and you're in the thick of it. I've kind of had the view to where I don't like the age groups. I would like to see it go back to novice, amateur, pro type of a deal. And it would keep down on classes. But your honest take, do you like having all the age group classes? or not so much?
Man, honestly, I don't know. Like, I guess I'd say I don't know what the right or wrong answer is. Because the B guys are as fast as the A guys sometimes. And to be honest with you, the C kids, I think there's some C kids last weekend that would qualify in the B. So I think it's just kind of all over the map. So I don't really know. The only thing I would say is, like I said, back to like trying to format it maybe more like a pro race where it's, you're racing, say, 2 long motos in a day. So you're kind of getting yourself a little more ready. Maybe that's where the Supercross next or the combines come in. I really like that idea. Everybody said it was going to take away from Loretta's, but Loretta seems to be still going. Everybody's really still wanting to make Loretta. So I don't know that that's necessarily the case. And everybody's different. Like I said, my older one was small until he got older. I mean, he rode 125s at 16, rode super minis at 15 because he was a small kid. And now my younger one's 13 and he's on a 125 already. So, so that kind of opens it up, to him. If you're a big kid or a small kid, you can still race, different size bikes.
Okay. So I
I
kind of think it might cut down on the whole sandbagging deal, but where it was like, then you have like defined rules. Novice class, you win 3 races and then you're out, or you finish top 5 in 10 races, you're out. But then you'd still have the same issue with guys that are just going to race the area and the regional, and so it's kind of one of those things. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, and I don't know what the answer is, to be honest with you. I've seen it kind of go different ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? That's kind of how the thing is.
The sandbagging thing, I think, yeah, exactly. To some extent, we're always looking for that edge, whether it's on the bike or physical or whatever. So I think everybody just bends the rules to fit themselves,
Johnny, the hard part is when you look at like take the girls class, it's 13 to 21. Just think about the athletic maturity. Can you imagine a 13-year-old racing against a 17-year-old Timmy? I mean, just to put it in perspective, when you look at that athletic maturity, though, see, that's what makes it so hard.
Well, Coach, now look in the pro class. Sorry, Tim. When you had like Jett Lawrence being 16, Stewart even being 16, 17, or at 15, right? And then now you're racing against the Mike Browns that are, RJ Hampshire, that's 33 years old at the pro class there,
Yeah, it definitely makes a big difference in experience. What I have noticed like lately as this year was seeing, obviously Deegan's kind of on a roll, but Hymus, Julian, like there's been a bunch of those young kids now kind of overtake those older riders, even though they're older and more experienced. So I'm kind of seeing that shifting, right now. I feel like in the last like almost like year or so, year and a half. So we're kind of getting away from that. But yeah, you're right. I think my boy's racing 12 to 17-year-old. He's 13.
That's insane.
So
That's
yeah,
insane.
and then we think, oh, he's big on the bike. And then when I got home from the race last night, we're sitting around bench racing with Evan, and Evan goes, "Man, I saw the videos. I thought you were big, and then all the kids next to you on the line, they're way bigger than you." He goes, "I know. I'm standing under the impound tent. They're a foot taller than me still." So even though we think he's big, he's still only 13. He's got a 13-year-old body. So,
well, in that 13-year-old racecraft against somebody, again, I use someone like yourself at 16, 17 years old. Think what you were accomplishing, what you were racing, and of course it's difficult. Well, I don't think it's really that difficult. Look at other sports, particularly in Europe, where they'll identify kids at 10, 11, 12 years old and go, okay, you're on our national program. So you're always that top 1%. You're always that cream of the crop. And obviously it's difficult to be able to say, okay, at this point in time, we have Ricky Carmichael, we have Tim Ferry, and we have James Stewart with Chad Reed. I'm just thinking Dade City is what I'm thinking, Timmy, right? Yeah. It's like, all right, now we're just going to take those 6 guys and put them on the gate. Nobody else can race them because you guys aren't good enough. Well, then you're going to have every moto dad madder than a wet hen. Well, I hate to say it, but your son's 14 seconds a lap slower than Timmy is probably disadvantaged not to not get run over. So but when you look at some of these, Johnny, think about Gustav Eden and Christian Blumenfeld in the triathlon. in Norway, they've literally been teammates since they were 10 years old. They've gone to training camps. They've gone all around the world. They've trained together. They've grown up together. And Timmy, they're now ranked number 1 and 2 in the world in triathlon at the highest level. But they've been on a development team literally for 25 years of their life. And now they're unstoppable. They call them the Norwegian train is what they call them. And that's, Timmy, I think back to, and Johnny, you and I have talked about this as well. I remember going out, Timmy, you remember as Bifflo. They now call it Orlando MX, right? You had the open class, i.e. pro class. You had the 250, 125, and the 80 class. That was it. We'd show up for registration at 10 in the morning and we were done racing by 2. It was it, 2 moto format, and they were all 20-minute motos, and that was it. So that's the, like you say, Johnny, just go by class size and experience, not so much age. But then you look at back to Timmy's point, his 13-year-old racing against a 17-year-old. Yeah, that's difficult for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're trying to tell a 13-year-old, hey, you don't have the physical size of these other kids right now. And they're like, yeah, but I'm on the gate with them. So, so I guess it's different for everybody depending on how big you are. I've seen a big trend. I mean, everybody wants to, I feel like, go, all right, I'm 16, I'm going pro. Like I went pro when I was 16, did some races.
Oh, okay.
But now looking back, I was very thin. The bikes were very slow. And then when I look at the tracks that I was riding, I'm like, well, you can't compare them. Like the 85s now are faster than what I went pro on. So, I mean, I was having a hard time jumping the triples at Supercrosses when I first got going. Like, I mean, sometimes you can only jump one. Sometimes you can even jump them both. So now an 85 rider would jump them. So, so just different times, I feel like.
But then they get in trouble for jumping them when they go to the...
I did see that. The kid, it looked like maybe the kid, I didn't get to the end of it with him getting, I guess he got in trouble or something, but I guess he's like, I'm going to be a hero. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And
well,
go for it, Coach.
No, finish thought, Chief.
I was going to steer different direction because I wanted to know, like, Tim, with what happened this last weekend with the rain and all of a sudden the race getting stopped with a red flag with like 7 minutes to go in Moto 2 for the 450s. Did that stuff ever happen when you were racing, or it was just...
Man, I don't know that I've ever had one stop. I feel like I'm dating myself. You already said my age. I'm 50. So, but I do feel like it was like, well, it's just, we're doing it. Like, but I think they have had some incidents where lightning strikes, and now it's, and now they have the internet with everybody can comment. Like, you can't do almost anything right or wrong. Like, so they stop the race. Oh, this isn't tough anymore. Like, but then if they run the race and you got the other people going, well, there was a lightning strike. It hit a motorhome, and they blow it out of proportion. So, but I remember being,
which isn't to say that didn't happen like back in your time, where like that could have 1000% happened, but just nobody knew about it because there wasn't cameras everywhere.
Yeah. I remember being at Unadilla and there was a storm coming in, and I want to say maybe 07 or 08. And then the storm coming in. So then they pulled us off the gate or something. And we sitting there, and I'm sitting on like a second or third. And I'm like, I don't care. You can cancel it right now. Cause I already know how much bonus I'm going to make. And so anyways, long story short, there's some other guys who are like, no, we want to race. The guy was in fourth. And so then we ended up racing. It was a mud race. I ended up crashing. I think it was the moto that Cody Cooper did really well. I think maybe he battled with maybe Stewart or close to it. And then I didn't get on the podium. So when I look back, I was like, oh man, that sucked. But we still went racing. So I don't know what the right call is there, but at the end of the day, I guess you
got to lean on safety, and that's kind of where everything is going with now.
Yeah, I think it was probably the right call. And how do you start a race over with 7 minutes?
I just feel really bad for AP because he did the right thing, coming in, getting goggles, and then the next lap, race is over with. So he just ended up losing time rather than you're like, hey, I got 5 more laps in, because you got the 7 minutes plus the 2 extra laps, like you're able to do this. And then he just that was just bad luck, apparently.
The one thing I will say, just bench race. We're just bench racing. You hate to see a red flag at a Supercross, but it does get exciting to see them all get in the staggered line and then have, somebody catch their breath or whatever. And then next thing you know, everybody's recovered. And then all of a sudden now you got to race again. So it stinks for that guy that's in first, but as a fan, like you're like, okay, is he going for him in that last turn? What's going to happen? So we've seen that kind of play out a few times. So yeah, maybe that would have been exciting to watch that. I don't know. Outdoor Nationals obviously a little different than Supercross, but yeah, I don't know. I've been riding in lightning so many times in Florida, just just going hot. I know I need to pull off from this moto, but I don't want to, and you got to make a decision at the time. But yeah, now knowing what we know now, yeah, we kind of tend to more pull in. I remember this time that probably just kept going and said, from Florida, so I'm like, what's the chances?
Well, I mean, it's just kind of like the wrong demographic, okay? Because moto heads, they're out there kind of risking the odds, right? We do this stuff that we know is dangerous, and we know it's not a matter of when we crash, it's a matter of how bad we crash, right?
Yeah.
So we just take those risks, and we can be degenerate gamblers and all sorts of different stuff because we're adrenaline junkies, right? So then when stuff like this happens, it makes us look soft or whatever. Like, no, just because the demographic is usually a different crowd, right? We're not playing pickleball and be like, oh shit, we gotta get off. Yeah. So it's interesting. And yeah, I know you do gotta lean towards safety, but at the end of the day, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, it definitely sucked for Plessinger, but yeah, moto is definitely a different crowd. Like when you're at the races and, yesterday was Father's Day, being at the races, you can look around and we all look the same. We all get nervous. We, have just a lot of the same tendencies. And I was packing the gate for the last moto of my boy yesterday. And I just went back into like my dad mode. Like think about my dad. My dad would always he'd build my gate up. We race in sand a lot. So he'd build it up and I'd go right across. So I'm like sitting there right until like the last second. And then the guy's like pointing at me and I'm that moto dad going. And then sure enough, it worked because that extra time I did prepping that gate, he got a great start out. He got the whole shot. So I was like, yeah, all right. But yeah, we're next level people, I think, to some extent. And I don't know that ever goes away.
It doesn't. It doesn't, but that's why we have such a commonality with guys that ride bikes, is you instantly feel like you're part of some sort of a club or family, you could maybe even go as far as to say that it's a cult, right? But what somebody else has been through with it. So there's like earned respect almost instantaneous by just being at the track with everybody. But then there's a counterpart to that is then there's a lot of like where it feels we're such badasses, but then we piss and complain about the most stupidest shit about stuff where it doesn't make sense. Or like these two can't go hand in hand, but somehow they do. Small, quick, different thought here. Tomac, he has been able to beat Jett twice so far as long as he starts in front of him. Do you think that trend continues? Or do you think that's really his only chance of beating Jett is by starting in front of him and Jett being somewhat buried?
Man, that's a tough question. I kind of still, Tomac never, don't ever sleep on Tomac. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I feel like once, I don't know that he's kind of maybe found his groove yet. I feel like he's going to kind of grab another gear. So, and he's fit. Like he's right there. I feel like it's cool to, and the other thing that's cool is you see two guys do it totally different ways. Tomac's way more aggressive. Jett's super smooth. But you can still do the same lap time. So I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I'm not sleeping on Tomac right now. I feel like he can win from the front. I still think I feel like he can still kind of come through and pass the guys and win too. So that's just, I'm a big believer in Tomac. And listen, I love Jett and their family is great. We spent a lot of time with them in Florida and the kid's amazing for sure. So I don't know. Maybe Tomac's got maybe like that. I think second win, maybe he's getting a third one. So we'll see.
So, okay, just putting you on the spot, Tim. How far back can he come from, hypothetically speaking, Can he come from 15th when Jett's out front, or does he have to start somewhat up front with Jett?
I don't think he's coming from 15th. I don't know. That's pretty far.
Okay.
That's pretty far. Yeah, I would say maybe 10th. I'll give him top 10. But then again, like when I see rides like Sexton do last year, was it Hangtown?
Yeah,
the
last
other day. And I was like, so sometimes those riders, like they get in the zone and it's like, and you want to shake them sometimes. I bet when you're their coach or their spouse or her mom and dad, like, because that ride that Sexton did last year was like, how's that humanly possible? Just everything was just spot on. Like, why don't you just do that all the time? It's a lot more difficult than that. But so I think these guys always have another level. I noticed that with Jett. Jett is when you're around him, you think he's at his peak, but he's never at his peak. I think he's always got another gear to go,
which is going to keep him healthy and safe, because he proved it this weekend where somehow he stalled the bike, and usually you stall the bike when you come to like a complete stop. Okay, that's probably what I'll say. I'll say that for this week's analysis video. But so make sure you subscribe to that. That video will probably come out tomorrow. But he went from like third and caught everyone again, and then just held like a 3-second lead. Just was doing just enough, which is just crazy.
He manages his race so well. Like, it's almost like he's got eyes in the back of his head to some extent. He just pushes his body only as far as he needs to push it. And I ran into this when I was racing Carmichael some, is Carmichael would always manage a lead on me the times that I was in second. And you get off the track and I was just dead. And then he's kind of like just manage. So then he's ready for the next one. Like, and then it's a snowball. And then like all of a sudden he leads the race. And then like he's ready for the next weekend. So it just keeps going. And I feel like that's kind of something Jett does, is he comes off and he's kind of, you see him tired. There was a few times this year that you could tell he put a big effort, but a lot of times he comes in, and he can still keep going. I don't necessarily know like, okay, this guy's so much fitter than everybody, but he managed that race and he only gave out as much effort as he needed to stay in the lead.
That's a good point. Coach, you have anything to add?
Well, the only thing that I think is going to be intriguing is we know that Jett's still not 100% comfortable with the bike. So if he can do what he's done in these first 4 rounds on a bike that he's not very comfortable with, that's where I think it's going to be very interesting to see, does he push that gap out? I agree with Timmy exactly. We were talking on the Moto Aftermath show yesterday about this. I feel like there's a different Jett that's out there. I also believe there's a different Deegan out there where he doesn't need, go back to Jett. I don't think Jett feels compelled to have to win by 45 seconds. Right. Even though the top 2 guys have been 30 minutes plus out there, or 30 seconds out there, Jett, somebody gets within a second or 2, he bumps it up a little bit, sees that there's a gap, hits cruise control, and he does it over and over. Literally what Timmy was talking about was what we discussed last night, is he's constantly in almost conservation mode. And you can go back to the race where they stopped it because they said it was too hot. Jett was like, okay, I've got to get ready. I'm not putting a dent into Tomac. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull the parachute. I'm going to cruise in for third, start saving some energy. And then we talked about it, Johnny, on the show. Worked out perfectly for him because they shortened the second moto. So he had saved some energy for the first moto, comes back for second moto, happened to be shortened. It's a win-win. And now we go back the next weekend, to Timmy's point, with less residual fatigue. Yeah. Timmy mentioned this a little bit earlier. When Johnny, this is a little bit of a redundant conversation for you and I, but for Timmy, what we talked about, myself being a physiologist, right? If I'm working with Evan and he's 16 years old and they announce that the season's going to go from January to October, I've got at least 2 to 3 years to help you and Evan get ready for 10 months of racing. If you're already, like yourself, a seasoned pro, and you find out in October that there's going to be a merging of the 2 promoters and how the series is going to go from January to October, you're really stuck in a catch-22 because you can't significantly change your fitness to get ready for 10 months of racing when for the first 4 to 5 years of your pro career, you pretty much have set it up for 3 months of Supercross, couple week break, then go do outdoors, then have a month off for you. Thank you so much for representing USA as well as you did. go do designations, come back, have a small break, and then resume. It's a completely different animal now when you've got a race from January to October with a total of what? I think 4 weeks total over 10 months. So when you look at the idea of the value of conserving energy, and this is when we get into physiology, these guys aren't even coming in their tip-top shape in January anymore because it's not sustainable. Johnny, it's just like Gustav Eden. If you listen to Christian Blumenfeld, you listen to Dietliff, you listen to all these top triathlete guys, they've got their 3 or 4 key races during the year, and that's what they're peaking for. Everything else is testing pacing and nutrition and all that goes with it. So I do agree with Timmy 100%. He's going as fast as he needs to go, but no faster. And it's really interesting to see where he adjusts, he being Jett, adjusts 1 to 3 seconds in front of second. But then you look at that gap to third place, and collectively, those two guys are putting 35, 40 seconds on everybody. Yeah. That's the part that blows my mind because they're not racing me, right? I mean, look at who they're racing, and they're putting 35 to 40 seconds, lapping up to 10th place. They lapped Mookie. And come on. I mean, that is no slouch. That's just insane.
We've seen it even, was it Colorado with Hymas and Deegan? You know, they kind of like got into that little battle where they just kept pushing, and then they gapped it from that second to third place spot. That was a big gap too. I want to say 30s, at least in the 30s to 40s off the top of my head. So something similar there. Yeah, I mean, it all adds up, especially when you talk about getting into late October. You know, and then you say you're switching teams and a lot of things happen. There's not a lot, you know, that's a tough season to prepare for. You know, now I think as you get older, you get a little less insecure about being in shape, and you've learned what your body can take and all these different things. So there's advantages there if you don't overdo it. So, yeah, I would say Jett's really, and he's obviously he's really stocky. I say stocky. He's really built well. Like he's got great genetics. He's trained really well. So, but he manages the race very, very well for sure.
It is interesting that we have some taller riders that are really excelling at the moment with Jett and AP, where for the longest time it was a lot of shorter guys. But then that's, you know, there's the other side of the straw there, because then you have Deegan coming up, who's 5'6", who's basically a little Ricky Carmichael. So I don't know what point I'm trying to get across here, but I really do like what Tim was saying, where Jett is racing for 22 motos, where a lot of the guys behind him are racing just for that moto, just to keep up. So they're willing to give everything, where this guy is looking ahead. And then that just shows the maturity and the specificity of Jett and his program. That is why he's so, as of right now, somewhat unbeatable, you know, and I'm really hoping for Tomac to come and beat him, but I think he can beat him. I do think he's got to start in front of him, or at least close to him, you know, top 3 or so. But then can he beat him over 22 motos? That's the real question.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, you got to think about is Tomac just staying in it, you know, because you never know what's going to happen as far as a championship goes. We're talking about that's if they go all the way through the 22 motos. You know, hey, tomorrow something could happen. Like, well, I guess last year, was it last year that Jett got hurt? Just fell over in a turn, I think, maybe did a stunt. So you just never know as far as the championship goes, you know, not losing too many points also. So, you know, maybe that second or that third, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, maybe his bike, what if his bike breaks one race, loses 25 points, and Tomac wins it, then all of a sudden, boom, that's the gap is right back into a race. So what I noticed, what is interesting to me is to see when somebody feels like it gets late in the season and they get on a little bit of a roll, and then all of a sudden I don't say excited that they can run up front, but like, and all of a sudden it's like they ride with a different enthusiasm. And then they were in the beginning. They kind of more deflated in the beginning, and then all of a sudden, I'm in the race. Oh, I can ride, you know, I can go to this level. So I think a lot of times the athletes they kind of hurt themselves a little bit sometimes. I think they always have maybe a little more to get, maybe not even in a physical effort, but just preparation, or, you know, the way they think about things.
Tim, we had a comment here saying that they want to know what your insight is on Prado, because everyone is giving Prado such a hard time when it comes to moto, and people are saying, "Oh, it's him. Oh no, it's the bike," and then other people are saying it's both. And so, interesting. What is your thought on
Man,
Prado?
he's interesting to me because I really kind of thought like, man, you watch him ride in MXGP, he's amazing. Like the way he rides the bike kind of reminds you of Jett. He's a very physical looking guy. So not because he posted that picture he posted like a week ago. Now everybody's like, he's like doing some like, I don't know, pull down or whatever. And he's all buff. But I kind of thought that he would adapt to Supercross better. So that's a little bit maybe alarming to me. You know, I felt like he was a really high skilled rider. And then the season's been going by and I've kind of said all along, I'm like, I don't know, or in my mind, and a few people have asked, I'm like, I think maybe he'll get top 5. And then he's been kind of doing that. And then I was at the race, I'm watching lap times. I'm at the amateur race, but I'm watching lap times and he was fastest in the first one this weekend, right? I think it was fastest or something in the first one.
I'd have to look. Somebody said Tomac had the fastest lap time with like a 2.
He might have. Okay, but I was like, oh, okay, he showed up. Like it was by quite a bit. So I was like, okay, that's the guy. And then maybe that's all it's going to take is for him to have a moment to go, okay, I am that guy again. So maybe he's kind of in there. But I really thought that he would do a little quicker at responding on Supercross.
Interesting, rather than moto.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really expect to see him running like say 10th. Like I pictured him as coming in, having now a whole off season of Supercross and then kind of jumping up, like maybe not to first, but jumping up a little bit. So, because he is very, very skilled. So I thought, oh, he's going to adapt to Supercross and he's going to be tough.
The interesting thing, sorry, finish what you're saying, Tim.
Yeah. So that surprised me. You know, but I will. So this is back to the MXGP versus American thing. Dude, our series is tough, man. Like, I don't think people realize. Now I get it that the MXGP guys, I feel like they can race all over the world. They can ride sand. They can ride mud. They really can ride a lot of different terrains. But when you get here, the tracks are really deep. They're really rutted. They're kind of real similar to some extent. And our guys know all these tracks. They've been riding them for years. You know, a lot of the amateurs as well, you know, have hit a lot of these tracks. My kids have raced, you know, at least 4 to 5 of the outdoor nationals before they ever even go. So my younger one, I took him on a 50 out to Washougal during COVID. I had a friend out there and he's like, yeah, come out here. So we flew out, we just raced the race. So he's already rode Washougal. I know it was on a 50, but he's already seen there. He's flown in. He saw the trees. He's seen the track. So
you get to know kind of what the fast line is, and
you know, like I mean, sometimes when I was racing, my fastest lap could be the second or third lap of the day towards the end because you already know the track. You know where to go on it. So, so maybe it's going to take him another season.
Timmy, let me ask you this because Prado's brought it up several times already. This weekend, Prado went 12:23. I don't know if he had a mechanical or something in the second moto. He talked about the idea that at the GPs, they get a full hour to try to figure out the track, where here they get, 2 8-minute motos or 2 12. What's the exact number? I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head.
12 and 10, maybe?
12 and 10.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about just giving them a little bit more time?
And they have the whole qualifying moto that relatively doesn't count besides almost like gate pick the day before. So everything is such a slower pace.
But I've always questioned that. You know, Timmy, you've obviously been there. Johnny and I have not been there, but you especially, not to change subjects to Supercross, but I've always been amazed watching you in the main event. And by the main event, you ride that track like you've been riding it as long as you've been at Dade City.
Right.
You know, outdoors are a little not quite as surprising because, like you say, year after year, the majority of the tracks are the same.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts about extending how much time the guys, regardless, 250, 450, whether you're European or American born, what do you think about giving them more time to try to shake the track down?
I mean, I think it would definitely help. I think there's a few things that I think that I do feel it could be better. I don't like seeing the B practice, the 250Bs, taking a lot of spots from guys. You see it at Southwick a lot. The B, say 10, locals. I say locals, but 10 guys that were in B practice, all of a sudden are up in the front and the other one. So that's something I don't know how to fix that, but I saw it this weekend again, and we saw it last year at High Point, the B 250B, threw a bunch of guys that are like 20th place guys out of qualifying spots. And then I think there was a few that normally make mains that didn't even make them. So I think that's something I think that could be changed somehow.
Wait, so you're saying like the 3-digit guys that are kind of, they run A practice kind of deal, but they really should just be in B practice? Is that what you're
I'm
talking
saying the guys there's guys that are in the B practice that get a smooth track, and all of a sudden they are faster than like factory guys that go in the next one. So I think, and I don't know how to do it, because you don't want to say, okay, we're going to Southwick, we need to, turn over our practice because of this, but there's guys, I hate to say it, there's guys at Southwick that make the Southwick race, and no knock to them. These guys that make any kind of main are badasses. So it's not a disrespect, but at the same time, they're not, they make the motos, but they're so many seconds off, but they made the motos because the track was smooth. So I think that's something I feel like that we could fix somehow. And I was one of the big pushers, and we had pulled back, I'd pulled back then at least, about going to 1-day formats because the season is long. But I think there could be an advantage of having a practice day on a Saturday and a race on a Sunday, or say practice on a Friday and then a race on a Sunday, on Saturday, to give more track time for the riders, but also to give maybe more interaction with fans. So that's something I think was kind of cool back in the day. We would have a Saturday practice, Sunday race. So the fans were going there. I feel like they were going there and camping for the weekend. Like it was an event. Yeah, they still do it, but your riders are more relaxed on Saturdays. Like when it's just a Sunday race, they're all business. Especially if it's super hot, like it wasn't Hangtown, you're not going to see those guys mingling around their tent, shaking hands, talking to people. But if they got a Saturday, everybody's kind of more relaxed. It's almost like you're in a local race. So maybe there is some advantage of having those guys there riding or doing something on the day before.
Like press day, that's when I'll talk to some of the riders. But then on race day, I just stay the fuck away from them, because I'm like, I know what you guys are doing. I'm not trying to mess up your zone. And Timmy, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're on to like something really good. And so this is where I feel could change all of it, but it has to somewhat do with a little bit of restructuring. Is let's have either add a class, right? That's where all the privateer guys go. And in order to add a class, we would need the full weekend, right? And that way the pro guys, the 450 guys, they're all factory guys that are qualifying on the same track together. So you're not taking away from them, because I know exactly what you're saying. Is like when I was doing nationals and everything, if you got into A practice, you're like, oh, I'm going to wait for Tomac to come by and I'm going to try to get on his wheel and just ride my fucking ass off, and I'm going to get a somewhat decent time. Right. And then you make the motos, and then you peter out 15 minutes in and you end up finishing 35th, but like you said, you could take it away from one of those other guys. And let's get rid of the production rule. Let's have it be complete work spikes like it is in GPs. Okay. And then third, let's do every other weekend, but when we are there, let's make it a full weekend. So guys get an extra week to recover. And then when they are on the race, you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday to figure out the track and make it more of a production that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a thought, I know if there's anybody from the teams or probably organization listening, they're like, oh, well, that's a whole nother day of kind of staff and, whatever, or the teams are like, oh, that's way more parts. That's all.
But if you take away a weekend race where now, as opposed to 33 races a year, you're doing 15. You know, that might be more manageable. That would keep costs down too.
Yeah. I know the manufacturer for the outdoors is always, I feel like, complaining that they go through so many parts because the outdoors are tough on bikes. So that's probably why they probably want to keep it as a 1 day boom, boom, in and out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's 12 and 10.
Okay.
And that goes by really quick. Maybe it's 15 and 12, but whatever. That's still very short.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really want to add a lot of time to that because you also still have potentially an LCQ or 30+2. So you can't add too many more minutes to the day. Otherwise, the day is pretty tough. So,
but it goes back to what you were saying earlier. If let's say you only need 20 minutes back in your heyday to dial Southwick in, then you go out for the 20 minutes out of the hour, you're done, you're good. And then come back on Saturday, you've got just 2 30s+2, ideally with an hour, even better, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Because like Johnny was saying, what I don't understand is, and your son's already gone through this, sounds like your next son's right there in the mix as well. You've got that development where, how cool would it be where you have the combine group that's racing on the same track as the privateers, like Johnny was saying, the second class. And then it's almost like let the premier class go out there and then let the privateers go out there. And I know the order, people would say, oh, well, by the time we get the combine guys out there, they would leave. I disagree. I think a lot of the fans, you said it earlier, Timmy, it's just like, fans are fans. If you're sending out the best combine riders and you put a full gate, not handpick 20 or 22, put 42 guys out there. Johnny, kind of do a lot like they do in triathlon. Timmy, in one of the race series in the triathlon side, Tim Ferry crosses the finish line. He gets 5,000 points. And every second that somebody's behind you, they lose a point. So if you put a minute on somebody, you get 60 more points than the person who finishes a minute behind you. So every second counts is their motto, right? So now all of a sudden you put 42 combine guys out there where if we're doing a point series, literally the finish line time is the points that you accumulate. So now you've got athletes racing to the finish line because literally every second counts. Yeah. But I agree with Johnny. Let someone like yourself and the OEMs run what you bring in the exotic unattainables. We all would love to see the bikes. It goes. I always use the David Bailey RC 500, right? With the coming back behind.
Well, it breeds innovation and creativity.
Absolutely.
And then it gets everyone going and doing this fine. I mean, they already kind of do it a little bit with making special things. And then you see them on all the bikes. But sorry, Coach. Okay.
No, you're spot on. And I like what you say, creativity, thinking outside the box. I like what Timmy said. Somebody just mentioned here, would it cost the promoters more? No, they're there anyways. See, that's what people don't realize. They're there from Wednesday on, right? So the idea is, and this is where we can get into another subject, and Timmy's obviously been through this, but we need to make the combine be a legitimate lottery system. Not just every OEM gets 3 or 4 guys that sends it in and it's a 20-man and they say, oh, this is a chance for these guys to get to know what it's like to be a pro. Well, these guys are already practicing at the factory tracks on the weekend or during the week as it is. If you're saying it's a true developmental, let it be where anybody can register. Obviously, you've got to be an A or a B class rider, obviously. But what we're saying is, okay, let it be a random where you might have 35 or 36 guys out there that are legitimate up and coming guys, where we do get a chance to see what they're capable of. It gives motor builders and suspension specialists an opportunity to go and race. And, Timmy, I don't want to say something out of line here, but it's not like Evan's first exposure to Supercross was when he signed his first pro deal, right? I mean, he's been on Supercross tracks, but all of the guys are doing it. Luke Fauser's been on a Supercross track since Daniel Blair could get him on there with 85s. Go ahead, Johnny.
Oh,
the kids now, man, the kids are so advanced now. Like I didn't race a Supercross race, or I didn't practice on Supercross until I got to the race for the first time. Wow. So nowadays the kids are doing it on 65s. I mean, there's a couple kids right now that, we always had a track at our house. So from when I raced, so obviously my kids had, that, in their backyard to some extent, but you see all these other people, they're either living at facilities that have Supercross tracks or amateur tracks. I think, I see clubs doing some kind of a Supercross next thing, like camp type thing. So everybody's getting on board with all that stuff. You could just do it on time, like, hey, whatever you qualify, and then you just cut the rest. But at least you give more opportunity. I see what you're saying about, because people have called me sometimes and they're like, hey, can you get me into this combine? And I'm like, bro, I don't know how I'm gonna get you into the combine.
Yeah.
I know you're fast and stuff, but I can't. You want to just make a call and get you in the combine? I can't do that. It doesn't really work like that. So,
but that's where I like Johnny's idea. If you have the premier guys, 8 or 10 full factory guys, the unattainables, the exotic, bring those back. Let that be its own show. Then have the privateers. Then have the combine or the SMX next. It just legitimately, would be able to say, okay, this is only the very best of the best, and it gives the privateers something to aspire to be. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah.
Turn the privateers into the e-bike class once Honda and KTM and all of them come out with the electric bike, right? I know it's a harsh topic, but that's exactly where the technology is going from four strokes. Like, Tim, you were one of the first guys I saw to be on the four stroke, and I'm sure you prayed to God that you weren't gonna kill it, because those things, the compression in them and everything, you couldn't start them. But winding this down here, one question I wanted to know is, in the amateur stuff, is everyone kind of copying the pros when it comes to running the scoop tire on all the terrain, or do you not see that often?
We see it a lot, actually. And I'm guilty of it, actually, this past weekend. I mean, we were at Axton, Virginia, which is an old national track. We ran a scoop tire, even though it was really hard packed, just for the start. At south of the border, the amateur or the mini bike one, I didn't do it. But then looking at the line after, at a few different kids, a few of the kids that were getting starts had paddles. So yeah, we were with Evan, we were running paddles at Loretta's. As hard packed as it gets. They got a sand section in there, but we were running paddles just for the start.
So the pro guys, they've got just a spec tire, of the paddle. And so, like, the next thing that I see happening is Dunlop coming out with different versions of the paddle tire because of how successful it is. If I was the marketing person for Dunlop, I'd be like, all right, we need a hard compound, we need a medium compound, and we need a soft compound, because everybody's using this damn thing. And I know damn well the pros are not running the same damn hard compound of the scoop tire they are for the high point, right? Where everything's blue groove and whatever, it wouldn't work. So that's where I think Dunlop is either missing an opportunity or they need to get on it, is just make it a universal tire, because everyone does it anyway, and just make it different compounds.
Yeah, I think I do, from everything that I know about this paddle tire. And I personally I hated a paddle tire when I raced, but they weren't that good back then. And so, but now they have where when your bike leans, because I'm always in my kids' ears, like, hey, you got a paddle on it. Watch this face, watch that face. But I think they're so used to it that they're used to the slide. They already kind of know it. I don't even need to tell them, because they run the paddle pretty much. I mean, especially when we lived in Florida, we were always running the paddle. I mean, you ran a paddle every day you rode. So, and I always heard the Baker's factory guys would always practice with a paddle years ago, but then sometimes go to the race and not run it. But now I'm sure they're all running that.
What do you think the chances are of those spec versions where the middle knobbies are the real hard compound, and then you could have the sidewalls be a softer compound so that there is somewhat grip for when that stuff happens? Do you think that that's potential?
I don't know how the tires act. Maybe it sounds terrible. I don't know how the structures.
Well, I know in like moto,
they can do
you'll
that.
Literally have special tires that are one compound just for when they're straight up and down, and then a different compound when they're leaned over. And I find it hard to believe that you have the elite racing not have things trickle down to this type of elite racing for two wheels. Somebody somewhere, if not, they're missing an opportunity there. So if I was a tire guy, I'd be trying to mix the compounds together.
So I will give you another. I'll just do this. I've told the story many times. So we got a Supercross track at our house. I mean, and everybody's rode the Supercross track from Trey to, pretty much all the top guys. Kenny's been there a bunch. We had Davalos. We had all these guys training there. And then whenever like Sandbox would get rained out, they would get more rain over there. They would, some of their guys would come over. Sexton too. So Sexton's rode the track. The fastest lap time I have on this track, this 1 year, right? I kept this track for 2 years. The fastest time was Baggett, and his tire was literally missing half the knobbies, and he was the fastest lap time on that track. So I'm like, I don't want to hear any like so. And I would always write it down, everybody's time on this thing, on this board, behind this cabinet. It was really cool. Should have probably kept this thing. And Baggett has the fastest time, and I looked at his tire when he was done, and I was just amazed. Like it was just, the track was just eating. It's one of those soft compound tires. I think he was on a KTM, that maybe BTO. So the fastest time is with half the knobbies. So I'm like, I don't want to hear any excuses anymore from anybody.
Yep.
Wild. Well, I know I was wanting to get into Hymas's potential ACL injury, but Timmy, I know we said that we were going to keep this around an hour, and truthfully, I got a 3-year-old that needs breakfast at this point and everything. So to all the daddy daycares out there, hats off to you motherfuckers, because stuff's not easy. Yeah, sorry for being explicit here.
Now you're good.
Tim, is there anything that you want to say? Like where can we follow you, or what's the races that you're going to? Is it just Loretta and then anything after Loretta? Is there anything you want to share? Or I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, not much. I'm no problem. Well, I just like to watch the videos and stuff. I mean, I don't know, I think I started following you maybe a year or two ago. And so I was kind of like, I watch it, and you're like, oh, he's picking that up. So not to blow you up on your own show, but I thought it was interesting, because I think a lot of people, we assume they know, but they don't know. So like, and we can't, and even when I'm not there, you're going down a line and you're talking about this guy or that guy, you don't get to see that kind of stuff. So I think that's cool. I got my younger son's going to do, shooting for Loretta's, missed it by 1. We got 1 this weekend. We're full bore in. So as soon as that's over, we always say, well, we're going to, Loretta's is over, we'll take a break, but we just start getting ready for mini-O's. We're going to give it a shot with the second one, and Evan will be back, hopefully racing here soon. Looks like he'll stay with Phoenix again next year. So that's really cool. We get a 2-year deal. Was riding really well at, Anaheim before he got hurt in that heat race. So looking forward to him being back to 100%. And just like you said, just chasing the moto dad life, and trying to keep my brains about me. As soon as I get off here, I go down and start unloading from the weekend, and we're going to Wisconsin this weekend, so probably got to leave on probably Wednesday. No time for much extra stuff.
Sprinter van or motorhome and trailer? What is your deal?
I've tried it all. I started with a pickup when we were on P-Dubs originally with Evan, and then got a toy hauler, like a motorhome toy hauler, sold that. Got a motorhome and trailer, sold that. Got another motorhome and trailer, sold that. Now I got a van, and we just go in a van, stay in a hotel. So there's so much stuff going on. Like when I get home, like I just need to unload that bike, start getting ready. I'm doing some work with an old racer, Andy Harrington, in Atlanta now. He's got in a film business doing stunt stuff, and now he's got camera cars, camera bikes. And so like tomorrow I'll probably be at the shop with him. So I've been helping him a lot when I'm not doing this moto stuff. So kind of venturing out of moto a little bit, which has been fun and exciting. But man, I got, with the younger one now wanting to do it, I'm kind of getting sucked back in. I just bought some land like 15 minutes away. So I'm going to try to recreate what I had in Florida that I sold like 3.5 years ago. So, I'm wide open.
Are you going to be based in Georgia or back in Florida, Timmy?
No, we're based in Georgia. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're settled here. We really like the area. Florida's changed a lot. It's not, it's when COVID hit, like it just got crazy down there. Like so many people and the prices and stuff. And then developers were coming in on my old property. And I was like, they were building on 2 sides of me. And I'm like, man, can't have housing on two sides of a track. So we sold out in January of 2022. January of 22, we sold our place that I had since '98, which was great because, you know, track's a lot of work, but it still was a bummer at the same time.
That facility was unbelievable. That place. If you guys ever saw the photos, it was like it. Yeah, it was. When neat. You picture like a golf course house, with a supercross and motocross track, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was neat. I will say the cows that I had on the property mowed the grass. Everybody would come by and they're like, "You weed whack this thing?" And I'm like, "Nope, cows do all that." So the cows, awesome. It was really neat. I always like when I see videos or pictures of Baker's factory, I go, "Oh man, like the sides of the jumps, and then in between the jumps, it's all grass." So I'm like, you know, I know it doesn't make a difference. I mean, sometimes we would go ride these gnarly sand tracks that were probably better training than, you know, these tracks that we put at these facilities now. I mean, I got some tracks in Florida right now that I was taking Davalos too. I got Davalos on the podium in the 450 class, and you know, Swole was riding with us and Mel Ross and those guys. We'll take them to these rough sand tracks.
You're off the turnpike. You're off the turnpike right there. You're going to that track by the turnpike and all those places. Just nasty.
There is one by the turnpike. I never went there. We had one we called Joe's track. It's actually Michael Pacone's stepdad.
Good old.
It was literally 3 minutes long, and it had a long straightaway that you know, it would just scare the crap out of you because it was just nothing but rollers. So
good old Pinecone. Haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, it was his place. So
that's awesome.
Just a truck that just teaches you everything about you want to know about riding the dirt bike setup, and about yourself too, like how to manage your energy in the heat in the summer. And so yeah, that's what I grew up riding on. So that was always my go-to, like, you know, trying to get somebody, you know, tough or strong or fit or, you know, whatever, get them used to the elements.
Absolutely.
But I still like the look of that green grass and the orange clay. I just think that's
so good.
Yeah, it's cool. So I'm going to try to recreate that here in this off season.
How many acres did you pick up in Georgia?
I only got 35.
Good though. That's
actually
good.
I only had 40 originally in Florida. I'd sold 10 to my buddy Steve. So my track was really kind of like tight because it's, you know, lanes can be close together as a training track. So so it was easy to take care of. So I really want a lot of extra land. But yeah, my old track is honestly only on 15
to do
acres.
That with 35 is pretty big.
It is, but then some of the other facilities are like 100. So I'm like, no, I don't want that much work. So yeah. So cool.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Well, Tim, it was a pleasure. You know I've been following you a bunch, and we talk every so often. And so thanks for coming on the podcast, and you're more than welcome to come back, and, you know, your boys as well. And so it's just, it's nice to hear from you and hear how much experience you have. You know, the listeners really can learn more with you just being around the sport for as long as I'm not calling you old, right? You know, I'm not, like I said, you're you might be 50, but you look 30.
So I was 30 earlier. So
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, we're learning as we go. I mean, man, every weekend I learn something this weekend. You know, I'm learning. I got 2 kids. Both kids are totally different in personalities. No one person's the same. Nobody's, you know, physical. And Rob can attest to this, I'm sure. Everybody's got, you know, different, you know, physical capabilities or strengths and weaknesses, and trying to figure out, you know, what works for this person or that person, and try to make them the best version of themselves. We could talk about the Lawrence brothers, and I admire that Hunter is, you know, come from where he was. He came here and he got hurt a bunch, and he figured it out, and then he won the 250, and then now he's in the 450. Now he's a podium guy. So you look at them side by side, and to me, they don't look like brothers, but they were both able to achieve the same thing. So, you know, they're always just continually working on like what works for him and what's going to make him better. And I like those guys. I really admire what they do, where they came from. You know, their approach is very old school. Not this, you know, one size fits all type, you know, program, which is very, very important. I think that we need to get that back in our sport a little bit. So everybody's an individual. I feel like you go back to Rob said about the gear, like we're individual athletes that ride for teams. You know, and at the end of the day, and I think maybe Deegan said something about it, like, you know, just in his way of saying it, like I'm me. Like I might ride on Star, you know, but I'm me, you know, and I do what works for me. And, you know, yeah, we have to wear the team shirt. We got to look the same, and we got to, you know, ride at the same facilities or do whatever we do. But at the end of the day, I think, man, I want to get back. And I like that Tomac stayed in Colorado and like rode completely by himself. And, you know, then you go, well, you got to ride with fast guys. And then you're like, well, what about that guy? And then you take all these guys from all around the world, you know, Roxon's from Germany, and then guys from South Africa. And, you know, I think there's just so many more ways to get it done. And I don't like the one size fits all type direction that I feel like the sport is kind of going in. I'm ready to see those individuals kind of, you know, pop out, you know, those Tomacs, and see what the Lawrences kind of do. And you know, those kids don't do the same thing. So they do what works for them and stuff. And, you know, whether it comes to bike setup, and the bikes are different. And yeah, I don't like that. Like, hey, this is the bike that somebody won on, you know, you got to go win on it too. And that doesn't work that way. Everybody's got different styles. So yeah, good stuff. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, we'll definitely have you on.
That was my end of the story rant. The things I always think about, like, oh, that doesn't work. That, you know, that just,
yeah. Well, it's cool because you know
doesn't
you have two little boys, and you get to instill in them a different training methodology in
Yeah.
you know your views to them. And you are right. What works for one person doesn't always work for another.
Yeah.
And so you got to try different things, because you might be holding yourself back because you're doing something that just doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
You know, it goes back to why Stewart did not gel with the new wave of train your ass off on the bicycle and whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I just need to fucking ride my bike,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
so then he went back to doing his own thing. Right.
And that was kind of me. And, you know, and I got to be careful sometimes not to say too much kind of what, hey, this worked for me, you know, but at the end of the day, we were motorcycle guys. So, you know, and then, yeah, there's some guys that have rode the bicycle a lot, or some guys, I mean, Rocco did a lot of gym stuff, and he was a really great rider, and, you know, that worked for him. But everybody, you're right, everybody's a little different. I think we've lost that word dirt bike dudes, and like, we need to go fast on dirt bikes. And so, but I will say, like, learn more I learned a lot when I was racing, but I learned a lot more about riding a motorcycle, trying to take my first one, Evan, from a PW. And like, you learn, like, you're learning all these things as you go. So I learned so much about how to relate to other people by my kids actually riding dirt bikes, and learning that, you know, okay, this worked or that didn't work. And my delivery and approaches is totally different with each kid. They have different personalities, and you know, try to make them the best form of them that they can, or whoever, you know, that, you know, I try to, you know, that I've coached along the way. I've had a bunch of riders, you know, in my time starting with Trey, when I first started with Trey in 2010, luckily he didn't need to be taught how to technically ride, because at the time I didn't know how to translate it. You know, I could do it, you know, but I learned, you know, real quickly as, you know, Evan started riding and I started getting on the ground with Trey, and learning what he needed. And he wasn't about learning how to ride the bike. He was already a pretty solid rider. So just trying to get him ready for, you know, perform on Saturdays. You know, at the end of the day, man, time qualifying is great. You know, he got pole, but the end result and the overall is the only thing anybody cares about. And the main event, you can qualify great at Supercross, you can win your heat race, but if you bomb out the main event, then it's like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so always main event, and the 30+2s, those were the most important things for me, man. I would always save everything I had for when it counted.
All right.
You go. You got to get going.
Yep.
On.
Princess needs, what is it, chocolate chip pancakes this morning or waffles? I guess it's daddy's choice. So
That's right.
Anyway, guys, as always, keep it WFO and make sure you go follow all these guys. because all they do is just show us good stuff. And yeah, that's my ending. So here we go.
Yeah, man.